Welcome everyone to Conference Connect's webinar series. We are so fortunate to have Lindsay Phillips with us today. But before we get started with Lindsay, I just wanted to remind everyone that Conference Connect is a speaker and conference discovery platform. It is free to create an account and explore new conferences and new speakers. Before I get into introducing Lindsay and all of her impressive accomplishments, I'd also like to encourage you to check out the reviews as well on Conference Connect. Share Conference Connect with your friends and family. We are continuing to grow. We actually just hit a major milestone of over 200,000 people to our platform, so we're very excited about that. Now I have the great honor to introduce Lindsay Phillips. And Lindsay and I have actually known each other for quite some time now. And I have been fortunate enough to see Lindsay's success over the years, which, as you know, everyone that we bring on to the webinar series is someone that I either know personally or have been referred to, because the thesis of Conference Connect is everything is validated through referrals, and Lindsay is no exception to that. Lindsay has quite an impressive career with respect to a lot of different aspects, but most notably today, she's going to be talking about podcasting, leveraging podcasting, and using it to your best advantage. We all get into this kind of rinse and repeat cycle of the same questions, and then we can't really utilize these podcasts for any other value. It seems like it's almost a waste of time, and Lindsay's going to tell us how we can do so many other things besides that, and how to really position yourself and utilize podcasts to your benefit, and so much more. But I know that that is one of the things that a lot of people have asked for feedback on. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining us. We
Yeah,
are so honored to have you.
happy to be here. And yeah, feel free to dive into the chat. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions along the way. But first, I'm going to share my screen. And of course, Canva is always a little bit weird, so bear with me. Did that work, Ashley? Oh, here we go.
Yes, we can see your screen. Yep.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so today I'm going to share common mistakes and how to fix them with podcast guestings. And I help coaches and experts turn their podcast guest appearances into lead generating conversation, elevating their authority, and attracting clients. I have my own podcast, the Leverage Your Podcast Show. Feel free to check that out. Now, what I want to talk about here is what's really going on behind the scenes, right? Like, we know that podcast guesting works. There are millions of people that are listening to podcasts on a daily basis. It's only growing. So we know that it's a captive audience for you to market your business, get more exposure, visibility, and attract leads and clients. But here's some case in point. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the stats, but there are 4.5 million podcasts out there. That is a ton. 73% of Americans have listened to podcasts, and 50% even in the last month. So, total captive audience. And so, even if you are frustrated with guesting, I want you to just stick it out, because it's just maybe need a few tweaks to really bring you that ROI. And so that's what I want to help you with today. So let's talk about what's actually happening behind the scenes. Whoops, here we go. Because we are, a lot of you are frustrated with the results. And so was I when I started out. I actually hired a podcast booking agency, paying them money and guesting on shows, but it just wasn't bringing results. And actually, at one point, I wasn't even getting booked. I'm like, what's wrong with me? And it was frustrating, right? I was like losing my confidence, not getting booked, yet I'm paying someone. So I totally hear you on any of the frustrations that you may have. So I'm going to go through a few, and I would love for you to go into the chat and just type number one. And when I go to the next one, type number two, because I would love to know a little bit more about you and like maybe what area you're feeling frustrated in. The first one is that hosts can ask you completely random questions and the conversation goes all over the place. So let me know if that is a problem that you've had when you've guested on podcasts. And you go off the call and you feel like I didn't even get a chance to talk about my expertise. I didn't get a chance to share my blah 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 method or my call to action, or the host just kind of goes rogue and you hang up and you're like, oh, is that even going to help me in my business? I know I've experienced that a ton of times. Number two, you don't know how to take control over the conversation so that you can share your expertise and be positioned in the right way. Kind of like, again, when the host goes rogue, goes down some strange tangent, and you're just like, I just want to bring it back to like talk about my expertise. That happens all the time. And you don't want to be rude, right? But there are ways that you can bring that back. Number three, stories are important, but you aren't really sure how to weave them in. I know for me, I just got stuck on stories forever. I'm like, I don't remember them. B, I don't remember like all the details, or I don't know how to say it right without rambling. I know they're key, but I don't know how to structure them. It just feels awkward, and you just kind of feel stuck, and then you don't tell any stories. Number four, you aren't sure how to sell without being salesy. So you're not confident in your call to action. Should you mention your program? Should you mention your course? How can you do that without being, it just coming across salesy or awkward, and you don't want to upset the host? So let me know if that is something that you feel frustrated with. Or honestly, you're not even sure why it's not working. You don't know what to fix. And so you kind of feel like giving up, and you're like, obviously podcast guesting isn't working for me, so I'm just going to scrap it. Please don't scrap it. And I was here too. I changed my topics, I changed my call to actions, I changed what kind of shows I was guesting on. And so you feel like you're throwing spaghetti against a wall, and you're going through all of these motions, and like nothing is working. So I can't read them right now, but I can see all these chats going through. So I'll love to check those out later. So, yes, these things can be frustrating and make you want to give up. Or sometimes you even, second guess your mission and your purpose and your business. Does anyone want to hear from me? Is what I have to say important? And that's just heartbreaking to me. And what happened is, throughout my journey, I'll go backtrack. I started connecting the dots. So my clients would go on shows and get frustrated with the results. I went on shows, wasn't getting booked for a while. And then when I was going on shows, I wasn't getting the results. And funnily enough, it wasn't really until I was working with clients and I started to leverage their content and repurpose it, pulling out reels and shorts, that I started to kind of see what was going on. And like one of my clients, her interview was just all over the place. I couldn't even create a title that was about one specific topic. And I was talking to her one day and I was like, Jen, I'm looking at your website and you do this and you do this part of your process and you have this exercise that you bring your clients through. But I don't hear you mention that in the episode. And she's like, oh, well, they don't ask. And I don't know how to bring that up. And so I started to see why all these mistakes were happening and how to fix them. So I started to really just dive into it and figure out a way to fix that, not only for me, but for my clients. I was just stubborn and determined to figure it out. The biggest mistake I found is that when you're guesting on a show and the topic that you're choosing, it's not aligning with your avatar and it's not aligning with your offers. And I'll give you an example. So I even guested on shows. I was a VA at the time. I was doing content marketing, and my topic was about productivity. And my lead magnet was about productivity. And so it had nothing to do with my offers. I didn't actually work with clients to help them with productivity. I just thought it was a great topic that would appeal to many entrepreneurs. And so people were reaching out to me, and it brought me no business. And so it wasn't aligned with my offers. Now, I call this a bridge to profits because you need to connect your audience's pain to your offers. So I always say the conversation that you're having on a podcast has to bridge that pain to your offers. And so this is the core of every conversation. So it's a matter of reverse engineering your funnels and your lead magnets so that you are aligned. And then it's also really understanding your audience's pain. What language are they using? What's keeping them up at night? What are they thinking, at 3 in the morning that's frustrating them? And really understanding that at a granular level from their perspective. And then in the middle here, you're crafting that conversation, and we'll kind of go into some of these moving parts later, but like the topic, the interview questions, your talking points, your stories, sound bites, all of those pieces have to be intentional and strategic. And again, bridge that pain to your offer so that you're seen as the solution. So that was the first key piece that you want to have in mind. The second mistake is dull and boring podcast topics. And I've been guilty of that myself. What you want to have is billboard ready topics that get you hooked, booked, and heard. So think about it this way. Your podcast topic that you have on your one sheet, that you might have on your website, or that you give the host, that tells the host what your expertise is, how are you different, and how are you going to bring value to the audience. So that is what is going to intrigue the host to book you. And I'll show you a bad mistake that I made with that. But the topic that you have quite often is also used for when that episode goes live, right? Like the host will take that topic and use it as their title when they publish the episode. So if that title of that podcast episode is boring and generic, it's not going to entice the listener. And that's key. Yes, you want to get hooked and booked onto the show, but you also want to entice the listener because they're scrolling through, Spotify, Apple, whatever, and they see the title. They want to know what value they're going to get. They want to know, is it going to pertain to them? So you have to think about that topic. Is it going to hook the listener, and is it going to hook the host to get you booked? And so here's an example of why I didn't get booked on shows when I hired that podcast booking agency. I had, how to grow your business with content marketing. Talk about a snorefest. It is generic. It doesn't set me apart. And it's not letting the host picture what I'm going to share in that episode. And so I just get passed by. But I changed my topic to say something like 5 social media marketing mistakes and how to fix them to attract more leads. The host knows I'm going to share 5 marketing mistakes. So I'm going to definitely share value. And they're also going to think, I bet that'll make great reels or a carousel for the episode. And they're going to share with my audience how to fix it, but also get more leads. And then the audience also knows exactly how they're going to benefit from listening to that episode. So your podcast topic has much more weight in the outcome of shows that you can get booked on, but then also being listened to, which is obviously key to getting leads and clients. Mistake number three is unstructured conversations. Now, remember that frustration that I mentioned earlier about when the host goes random, they go rogue, they ask all sorts of different questions, they go all over the place, and you're left feeling frustrated that your expertise wasn't able to shine. You weren't able to give enough value to the listeners. And part of this problem is a mindset, believe it or not. It's thinking, oh, I want to have an organic conversation, or I just want exposure and get some visibility on shows. You want leads and clients. Yes, visibility is important. Don't get me wrong. Yes, you want to be seen as an authority, but you want to be seen as the solution for the listeners, right? And you want to be you want them to take action. You want them to opt into your lead magnet, to book a call with you. And so having that structured conversation is really key to enable you to give the kind of information that is necessary to do that. Now, part of the problem and why this happens is the one sheet. Now, this is an extreme example, but most one sheets is obviously your bio, your credibility, but quite often there's like a few topics and then sample questions. But those questions, and you can see here that those topics are about as generic as you can get, but the sample questions, two of those questions are about topic one. A couple of the questions are about topic two. A couple of the other questions are just about your journey, your expertise, running a business, really general questions. And think about the host, right? They don't know you. They don't know your expertise. They don't know your framework, your process, your method like you do. So they default to the one sheet. They don't know any better. They grab that and go. And this is why the conversation is so random, because that's the questions that they have. They don't know how to guide the conversation so that it sets you up for success in the episode and to deliver value for the listeners. And so I actually don't make a one sheet, I make a two sheet where it shares the topics, but it also has the interview questions. The also a key point here I want to bring up quickly is if you do have interview questions, they're too general. So if the host asks, "What are some mistakes podcasts make?" I can start sharing a mistake, but then again, they might go rogue and go down tangents, and I'm like, "Come back, let's get back to the other mistakes so I can talk about, XYZ." But if you give them the question, what are the 5 key mistakes that podcast guests make that hurt listener engagement and conversions? The host knows that you're going to give 5, so they're less likely to derail the conversation because people don't want open loops. They want you to share all of that value. They're going to remember, like, oh, yeah, wait, we've only talked about 2. What are the other 3? So even the interview questions will help bring that conversation back to that structured conversation so you can deliver that value and showcase your expertise. So to fix it, you need a conversation compass. I actually call it the interview GPS, but basically it's a conversation compass that guides the conversation. And so you actually want to give the host interview questions that guide the conversation for that topic. And I know what you're all thinking, but we want an organic conversation. I don't want it to be a script. It doesn't have to be a script, right? You can still have an organic conversation, but use those questions as a guide, as a framework. And it's showing the host the value that you're going to give, and they want the listeners to have value. they want the listener to have these solid takeaways. So the host is not going to read off the questions like, oh, question number two. So again, it's using it as a guide, and it's educating you as the guest of how to use that as a guide. It's educating the host of this is how you can deliver a ton of value for your listeners and guide the conversation and use it as a framework, but you don't have to read them off as a script. Mistake number 4 is missing impactful stories. And so it's a known fact that facts tell and stories sell. So when you're talking at a listener and you're just sharing facts and tips and what have you, they're not picturing as well how it relates to them. And if you share a story, they're more likely to be like, ah, I get it now. Because they're being heard, right? They're being understood. They can picture themselves in that situation, but they can also picture themselves in the solution. So if you share a story of you when you were, in the past and you weren't getting things right, but then you figured it out and now we're getting great results, that feels more proven than you just sharing, oh, if you do this, you get this result. Same with when you're sharing client stories and not a testimonial. So it sounds like rehearsed, like when you see someone on stage and they've got like the testimonials up on the screen. You want it to feel more like an example or an illustration, and that it just rolls off your tongue really easily. And just like I was sharing that story about Jen, how she was super frustrated with her podcast interviews and them going all over the place. And yes, once we got the topics and dialed in the interview questions, her interviews were so much more focused and she was able to share her expertise. She got more leads and clients. So this way you're using those client stories to illustrate those points. And so here's an example. So, and I know there's a lot of words here on the screen, but let's say someone says, oh, one time I helped a friend who was struggling to organize her home. We spent a whole weekend decluttering and she felt so relieved. It was such a great experience and I'm glad I could help. It's kind of like, meh. You want to have as many details. You want to connect with the listener so that they can picture it in their heads of what it's like to work with you. So if they phrased it in a different way and said, a client of mine, Sarah, again, you're actually putting a specific person in there, came to me overwhelmed with clutter. So how they felt, using my 5-step home harmony system. Key, they're sharing their framework, their expertise, their method. We tackled her space in just a weekend. Not only did she reclaim her living room, but she said the process gave her clarity and confidence to approach other areas of her life. And the system helped countless clients transform their homes and mindsets. So you're getting that outcome, you're showing yourself as an expert, and you're sharing your method, your framework, oh, when this client went through this course and this exercise, they got this outcome. So it's showing your expertise in a bigger, more specific way so they can picture what it's like to work with you. And so this is the instance where you're dropping mic-worthy sound bites that engage, right? The listener's feeling engaged, they're feeling heard, you're captivating them, and you're becoming more memorable, and you're seeding and selling your programs in a way that's not salesy. You're just using it as an example within a story. And so I can say, for instance, when Jennifer went through my Conversations That Convert program, she was really frustrated with her talk because she wasn't getting leads and from her podcast episodes. And when we analyzed her podcast talk, we realized that we actually gave all the goods away in her talk. And so there was nothing to lead them to. And so when we restructured her conversation so that she was able to give an overarching view of her program and all the different pillars in her program, listeners understood how they can work with her. And then they wanted the lead magnet because it was the natural next step, and she got more leads and clients. So that's just a quick example off my tongue. Here's another one. So one of my clients had a YouTube channel but didn't consider it a lead source. Once we started leveraging podcast guest appearances in my fill in the gap program and repurposing them on YouTube Shorts, her reach exploded. Her channel grew by 30% in a month, and she closed a new client who found her through a single short video. Notice that the soundbite is really small. So you're looking at like 30 seconds and it's very concise. And if you have these story sound bites already prepared on a piece of paper beside, your desk, when you're on a podcast, it's easier then to just grab one when it fits that situation, have it roll off your tongue. And then you're also seeding curiosity about your programs, right? Oh, when so and so went through, was a part of my mastermind, and we went through this XYZ method or exercise. That makes it memorable because it's an actual name of a program. They got this result. They were super happy. So the listeners could then picture what it's like to work with you. Mistake number 5 is a weak call to actions. Now, most guests don't actually do a call to action, and it's super common. They're afraid to be salesy. They feel like, well, it's the host's podcast, right? I don't want to step on their toes. And so they do one of few things. They either don't say anything, they say, oh, go to my website, check out this, or you can find me on LinkedIn, you can check out this on this URL, you can go here, here, and here. If you're going to send them to your website or share 4 different things that they can do, they're going to do nothing because they're just going to be super confused. They're going to go to your website and be sidetracked by all the different options. And in the end, they're more likely to not take action. Here's a mistake that I made. So I was guesting on a podcast. I was talking about email marketing. Again, a topic that I didn't really have a service for, but I thought it was a great topic that people wanted to hear about, and I knew enough about it. And so I spoke about email marketing. And then my lead magnet at the end was a social media roadmap. Talk about a disconnect. So if you're talking about email marketing, but you're giving a lead magnet that just because you happen to have it, that doesn't relate to the talk that you just gave on the podcast episode, they don't have enough motivation to want to grab that lead magnet or that offer or resource, whatever it is. And so again, thinking about back to that bridge, right? Yes, your conversation is the bridge between the pain and your offers, but your call to action also has to be that bridge between your talk and your offers. It has to be that natural next step. They've heard from you and you've given value and you've given them some tips, but you're just making them thirsty and hungry for more. And only give one call to action that relates. And so this is actually your offer on ramp to serve and convert. Again, you're giving a ton of value. What is the natural next step for them to take? And this call to action should also be a natural next step to then go to your program, your course, whatever your paid next step is. So you have to think about those stones along a bridge, and it all has to connect, right? The audience is paying. How can you be a solution? What are your tips? What are your programs? What is the lead magnet that is the next step for them? And then, of course, once they're on your email list, what is the next paid thing? Are they going to your mastermind? Are they going to a membership that you have that again is solving that problem? So think about that customer journey while you're mapping out all of these strategies. And when you do say the call to action, you want to be really concise. So grab my free guide and checklist for 3 easy ways to leverage and repurpose your podcast guest interviews to attract more leads, clients, and opportunities. Just head to blah, blah, blah.com/guide. Or if you can create an actual domain that is just for that lead magnet, even better. You want it to be easy to remember, easy to type in. But when you're giving that call to action, you're also giving them the reason why they should grab it, right? If you want to attract more leads, clients, and opportunities and repurpose your podcast episodes in a bigger way, go grab my free guide and checklist. Get it here. So you want it to be really concise. And so here's a bonus tip. So you've got your topic, right? You've got your billboard ready topic. You've got your interview GPS. So you've got your strategic interview questions. You're going to have some story sound bites and a strong call to action. But while you're talking about your talking points, you do not want to wing it. Because when you wing it, you can be all over the map, right? Here's the point that you want to make. And then if you're talking about it all around in different ways and not getting to the point faster, you either lose the audience because you ramble or you go off on tangents, and it can be confusing to the listener, right? It might make sense to you because it's your expertise. You do this every day, but you want to make sure that it's super clear and concise for the listener so that they understand it and have an aha moment. So you want strategic talking points. I call these message pavers. Again, going back to that bridge, it's your talking points that are going to showcase your expertise, help them picture how you work with your clients, what your overarching formula, method, process is, and talking about it in a way so that they understand. Again, if they're confused, they're not going to say yes to your call to action at the end. And so this is, again, that conversations that convert, going back to thinking about the bridge. So it's super easy to remember, thinking about your avatar, their pain, what your premium offer is, thinking about the conversation as a completely strategic bridge. Do you have a billboard ready topic that gets you hooked, booked, and heard? Do you have an interview GPS? Do you have those strategic interview questions to guide the conversation and show the host how much value you're going to give? And then again, it gives structure to that conversation so that you can deliver your message paver. You can deliver those talking points that are going to be concise, that position you as the expert, that shows the audience that you have a proven formula to fix their problem. And of course, you're going to share some mic drop moments and some story sound bites to help illustrate those talking points and help them picture what it's like to work with you. And then, of course, you're going to have your offer on ramp, a strong call to action so that they are compelled to take action, and then come down your funnel to buy your next step. So every single point along the way is strategic. All right, I will stop sharing. So I hope that's helpful.
That was incredible. I actually love the connecting the pain points aspect because I've always believed that there are only two ways businesses are successful. They're either doing massive impact for the few or incremental impact for the masses. And you really just showed like not only visually but spoke through linking those together. I thought that was a brilliant point. I also thought it was a brilliant point on why not have a call to action at the end. It doesn't have to be, everyone says where's the best place they can reach you. You can have it be your CTA. That's the best place to
Absolutely.
reach me. And that is a really good, I never thought about that. I'm at fault for that too, and I'm sure others are also at fault for it. Well, since we have some time now, I would like to open it up to questions for Lindsay because I just thought this was really, really helpful and made me question like the barriers I had put in my own
Hmm.
mind. Like you spoke to a lot of them about how do you structure the questions and kind of help guide the interview as opposed to just being like
Hoping for the
uh
best and hoping that
yes.
the host asks you good questions. Like, it's that lack of control, right? It's so frustrating. You're spending time and money, and yeah, when you feel like, oh, fingers crossed, they ask the right questions. Like, no, you can get that control back.
Absolutely. I saw one of the comments earlier while you were talking about someone saying they think they said they've done over 30 podcasts. I'm trying to find it right now, but they've done a lot of podcasts and they haven't received um really any traction from
Yeah.
that. And I feel like I've been at fault for that too. So if you have any questions, remember Lindsay is such a great resource. I mean, I'm just like reading your resume here that you've been featured on ABC, Huffington Post, CBS, Fox, NBC, Daily Business Post, Earworthy, Medium, Pod News. I mean, the list goes on and on. So this is a phenomenal opportunity for anyone. If you have any questions, I'm just going to give everyone a couple more minutes. Sometimes it
Yeah.
takes a little bit of time to type in your question. But Lindsay, in terms of just with respect to the title, I know you touched on that earlier, but with the title of the podcast, have you seen resistance to like um, title suggestions to the podcast host, or has it been like well received? Because I just know sometimes that kind of might interfere with someone's ego a little bit. Like, I know
Yeah.
my show.
I get that all the time. And so when I like, because you fill out a form, right? When you book to be on their show, sometimes they'll ask you questions, or sometimes it's like book a time and that's it. I will actually email them and say, I'm super excited. I thought I would send you, I know we talked about covering this topic. Here's the like, here's my topic. I also have some interview questions to help you guide the conversation. And I always say, like, it's not that I want an organic conversation, but I also want to make sure that um I give enough value to your audience. So if you frame it in a way that, hey, this will help get you prepared, use it as a guide so that I make sure that I deliver enough value for your audience. So you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for them. And I've never really had anyone like say anything back to me. And I have a lot of tricks where if the host does go rogue, how you can bring that back. So even if they didn't ask the second question, you can set yourself up to answer, like to give those talking points. So when I work with a client, yes, we make the interview questions, but I also give them a redirect statement in case they like go off on a tangent or too deep into one spot, to kind of like bring that back. Um, yeah, and if when the show goes live and the topic, like how they put the topic for the episode is like weird. I've had people, Ashley, that are like, the title is a play off my business name, and they're like smooth content marketing and some with Lindsay Phillips. And I'm like, that doesn't tell anybody anything. Like there no one's going to listen cuz there's no what's in it for them. I
Yep.
will actually make my own title and my own show notes, put it on my website, and when I promote it, I use that. I'm like,
Wow.
I do not want to give up that control. It's too important to me. It's my business.
Absolutely. And then what are your thoughts on with respect to understanding a podcast avatar? Is that something that's for example, like I do podcasts and a lot of oftentimes they're real estate focused podcasts, right? But there are a lot of different types of real estate investors out there. So it's important to me to kind of understand, okay, is your audience new to real estate investing versus are they more
Mhm.
sophisticated versus are they into flipping or rentals or so how do you position the prep work and really understanding the audience? And then do you take that information to help guide you in terms of how am I going to craft the message? How am I going to get to that CTA? Or is that something that you pay attention to as well?
Yes, because often I was actually just working with someone last week and they have like a couple of avatars, right? And so some I forget what they are right now, but they have two different avatars. So I we crafted one specific talk, the topic, the interview questions, the talking points. But if they are speaking on a social media marketing type of podcast, then the pain points that they bring up or the frustrations, they will take these two out and put these two in. So it's just a matter of focus, just pivoting the focus. Or like when they give an example, they'll use a story bite that relates to that situation instead of something that was another. So you can swap out your story sound bites. And if you have, you know, five interview questions, you can make an extra one that is just for a particular audience and you just kind of swap it in. So there's always that same framework. And then you just slide pieces out and in for different types of shows. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I
Okay.
have one follow up to that. And I'm stealing all the questions here. So feel free if you have any questions to type them in, and I'll make sure that we get them answered. But my follow up question is I often get asked to speak on a podcast everywhere from someone who has, you know, hundreds of thousands of views and downloads per month to someone who's just starting off. And before, I was really hesitant to do the folks that are just starting off because I was just trying to tap into their audience. But it sounds like to me that you might be of the position that it's still worth doing the news shows because then you can still craft your messaging and use it for your own marketing. Is that something that you do? I'm just realizing that now, like it's an
Yeah.
epiphany of hearing you speak. I had never thought about it before. You made me really kind of question my norms on what I think of podcasting.
For sure. And everyone typically will be like, oh, I want to be on shows where it has a big audience. It's like, yes, that can help you sometimes, like for from a credibility standpoint to say, oh, I was on this show and, put it on your media page. But the key, again, and especially when you really understand your avatar, where are they hanging out? What kind of podcasts are they listening to? What are their pain points? Then you can kind of understand a little bit more about them and what kind of shows they listen to. Like, as an example, um, within the real estate investing space, yes, there are a lot of real estate investing podcasts, but what if your ideal client is also listening to, or maybe not realizing that real estate investing is a viable option for increasing their wealth? What if you go on podcasts that are all about wealth or creating a legacy or whatever? Or if many of your clients are pilots and they want passive income and so they want to use real estate investing but they don't want to actually do anything, then maybe you could be on shows that are for pilots, honestly. And like, so they're listening to those podcasts, and it's like, okay, as a pilot, here's how you can make passive income. Obviously, revise that, but it's just kind of like thinking outside the box. And so in that case, if you were on a podcast, let's say, that was in front of pilots and it was a smaller audience, your message comes out strong because it's not something that they've necessarily heard about before, but it solves one of their biggest problems. And whereas if you're on real estate investing podcasts and there's a ton of your competitors that are on those shows all the time, you can kind of get lost in the sea. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, I mean, I don't book my clients on podcasts, but the topics and the interview questions and the talking points, always taking that avatar in mind and going back to what their pain is. And then if you're pivoting what shows you're on, then you just change the interview questions slightly. The core of it is still the same, so it's easy to do. You just swap out some of those stories or the talking points so it fits that audience a little bit more specifically so that they feel heard.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I thought that was a brilliant point you just mentioned where you said don't always swim in that red ocean of other real estate investors in this given example, because you don't stand out as much. That was
Mhm.
really well taken.
And for
Um,
me, it's like
yeah.
I was on a author like a podcast that was for marketing for authors. And so she invited me on. I went on. I've gotten 2 clients from that podcast. And so now I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Okay, now I need to go on more podcasts for authors.
Yep.
Whereas before, it's like, okay, I should go on podcasts for podcasters or I should go on entrepreneurial podcasts. But it's like, you have to listen to those cues, right? Who are your clients and where can I tap into them faster?
Yep. Absolutely. So, I think that we should play a little ironic game right now. Where is the best place people can reach out to you?
Thanks for asking. I do have a great guide. Let me just remember what the URL is. Great. So it's from crickets to clients. I actually teased it in one of my slides, and it's 5 shifts to turn podcast interviews into real results. And again, some of it we touched upon today, but it really lays out how to change your mindset and your strategy so that you can get better results from podcast guesting. And if you go to smoothbusinessgrowth.com/connect, you can grab it there.
All right, let me just put that in and I will put that in the chat right here
You bet.
for everyone. So you can all grab it. And then if you are watching the replay, we'll make sure to um uh did you say connect or clients?
Connect.
Okay, sorry. Let me just go back it. I think I typed in the wrong thing here. Oh, it automatically redirects. Is that the correct? Yes. Ditch the
Yes.
correct. Yes. Okay, perfect. I have it here. So I it automatically redirects to another URL, so it's not letting
Yeah.
me copy it, but it is the correct address. So we'll make sure that it's in the replay for everyone, so you can grab your own guide. Ditch the crickets. Super cute title. I really like it a lot. We're going to be sending out the replay afterwards, so you can check the replay. You can check the notes here as well. And then if you have any questions, we'll also be sending out Lindsay's contact information, so you can reach out directly to Lindsay and work with her if you'd like. I think Lindsay has proven, not only from her resume from before even coming on this webinar, but the webinar itself was brilliant. So I'm super grateful, Lindsay, for you joining us today.
Thanks
And
for having
thank
me.
you everyone for continuing to support Conference Connect. As a reminder, you can create a free account on Conference Connect. You can create a free speaker page, a free event page, and list your events on our site, all for free. So start connecting today. Thank you again, Lindsay. We really
You're very
appreciate you
welcome.
joining
Thanks for
us.
having me.
Have a wonderful Tuesday, everyone, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with our next guest. So thank you so
Woo.
much. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.